Good afternoon, Wrestling Inc. Get up, get going. Welcome back to the Wrestling Inc. Daily. It's me, your managing editor of WrestlingInc.com, Nick Hausman, joined here as I am every Monday, back in studio. It's our good friend Michael Wiseman. Michael, welcome back to the Wrestling Inc. Daily.
I know we got some heavy stuff to get to here in a minute, but I just want to say right off the top here, I'm happy to be here, Nick. I'm happy to be here with you. And Mondays, listen, I look forward to this every week. So super excited to do this with you today.
Yeah, 100%, Michael. Very happy to have you here. Very happy to have everybody here today. Want to thank everybody who's always already jumping into the comment section. Lee Butler, is Nick Hausman home yet? Yes, I am, Lee. I'm back. Thank you, everybody who begrudged and went through with the not great audio and video quality last week as I was forced into a hotel to do the show. Hey, you know what? We all did it together. We're on the other side. We're going to do the daily here again like normal today. We do have some upsetting news here that we're going to start the show off here in just a second with. Obviously, we're going to be talking about Scott Hall to lead off, but we are also, beyond Scott, we're going to talk the news of the day here just a little bit. Also, later on, if you're listening to us in audio form, you'll hear the full audio from Jungle Boy's AEW Revolution Media Scrum. That is the last unaired audio from that scrum. So you're going to get to hear a little bit from Jungle Boy here today. If you're in video form, you go over to the Wrestling Inc. YouTube channel. You can check it out. And, of course, at the end of the show for everybody, we will dive into the mailbag. We are going to look at Cody Rhodes possibly returning to WWE. Is he going to do it tonight? We're going to find out later on as we all talk in the mailbag about it. But, yeah, before we get to the news you can use, we do want to start off the show, obviously, sending out our best to the friends and family of Scott Hall. Pro Wrestling Torch was the first to report that Hall is on life support at the Wellstar Kennestone Hospital in Marietta, Georgia. He had 3 heart attacks that he suffered last week. Kevin Nash said that the family and friends of Scott had gathered at the hospital to take Scott off of life support today. Dave Meltzer here, being verified here from Brian V in the comment section, reported about half an hour ago that Scott has been taken off of life support. He is still breathing. It would take a miracle to have him continue to breathe on his own. For those that don't know exactly how this works, when you're on life support, right, they're pumping your oxygen for you. They're making your lungs go up and down, keeping you going basically via machine. When you get taken off the machine, of course, there's a chance that a very strong chance your body's no longer going to be able to continue on because it needed all that support in the first place. There are very rare circumstances where when you remove somebody from life support, their body reacts and says, hey, I got to get it together, and they recuperate. Now, it's a long shot here. I'm just being honest. I'm not trying to give anybody false optimism here with Scott, but that's where we're at right now with Scott Hall. The whole wrestling world, the whole world saying very, very nice things about Scott, sharing photos. Where's your head at right now with this one, Michael?
It's a tough one. And you know, as somebody who grew up on the Attitude Era, who saw this guy, I mean, my association with him is in the NWO, in WCW from those early days, kind of making pro wrestling cool again. This absolutely sucks and is a huge tragic loss. And I think part of what it is we've all been on this journey. If you followed Scott Hall's career for so many years, the trials and tribulations, him getting clean and, you know, kind of off the bandwagon at times, but us always kind of cheering for him and wanting him to get his life together and doing that at times. And, I think it sucks that this is the thing. It was a hip surgery and it was some heart attacks following that. It still feels unexpected and sudden. And I just go back to Scott Hall as a kid and even to this day, nobody made pro wrestling cooler. I mean, yeah, we had lots of great. The Rock was a great promo. Stone Cold Steve Austin was badass, but nobody played the cool guy as well as Scott Hall did. He just seemed bigger than life and as cool as they came. And yeah, just a huge tragedy, a huge loss in the world of pro wrestling.
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, I think we're going to be talking about Scott here more this week. But to your point about the cool factor, I mean, who hasn't flicked a toothpick and thought to themselves that they're Scott Hall for just like a moment? I think I think you're a bad wrestling fan if you've never done that. Honestly.
It's a very iconic, something as simple as that. Just think about this. He made something as simple as a toothpick flick iconic. He made something as simple as doing the airplane slowly as you walk somewhere. Right. Iconic, right? Dude's just a huge star.
Yeah, anytime anybody does that kind of like glide underneath a ladder, I mean, that's all Scott, right? I mean, and we'll start here. I do want to we'll slide into news. You can use news to leave a bruise. There was this report coming out of Fightful that I thought may tie into the Scott stuff a little bit. And that was it's about Cody a little bit. Producers and agents haven't been briefed on Cody's impending debut or signing. Those close to the former AEW EVP were not aware that Damian Priest was going to not do his usual finisher on Raw, which is, of course, the Crossroads move that Cody has popularized. A lot of people are saying, oh, maybe that's an indication that, Cody's coming in. They asked him to stop doing the finisher. Well, I watched Raw today. Spoiler alert, I had no DVR as I was thrown into this hotel, so there's a lot of wrestling this week I'm going to be finally catching up on and talking about more in depth than the tertiary look I got at the gifts last week. But I finally got to watch it all, watch this match, saw Priest change his finisher, but he did the outsider's edge. He did the razor's edge. And, all things considered, we don't know who knew what. Was this them telling Damian Priest, hey, Cody's coming in, don't do your finisher? Or was this Damian Priest giving a shout out to somebody that, was very influential to him down in NXT? I know that he and Waltman, Scott and Sean Waltman both got to go down to the Performance Center and do some training. And I know that Damian was one of the guys that they spoke to. And, Sean has made the parallel to Priest and Scott many, many times. So I'm not convinced that was a Cody thing. That may have been a bit of an homage to somebody who knew was maybe in dire straits. That's how it came across to me watching it.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting take. This, it puts it in perspective talking about the influence of somebody like Hall on today's younger stars and Waltman and Nash and that whole group. And you look at guys like Austin and The Rock and the entire gamut of those main event stars in WCW and WWF during the Attitude Era. I think part of the reason this one's harder to every loss is tough and every loss hits everybody differently, right? But for me, part of the reason as a fan is one's a little bit harder. And again, still on live support, so I don't want to put the cart before the horse.
He's off life support.
Still off. Off of life
support. Change the title of this episode when we're done because he's not on life support at the moment. He's off. Yeah,
he is not past this plane of existence yet. Right.
Right.
It feels like this is one of the first major losses in recent memory of the Attitude Era, of those main guys that made that era so influential for what it is. And I think that's going to be our star. Austin may be coming back this year, but we're talking about our stars getting old and how influential they were to fans of that era. So yeah, anyway, just a lot of emotions around, I think, all of that macro there.
It's a really good point. Yeah, we haven't had a chance to, we haven't seen a lot of losses from the hierarchy of the Attitude Era, kind of Monday Night War type era quite yet. So definitely touching a lot of people right now. Encourage you all to continue to send your love out on social media. Don't bug people, though. Like I saw Waltman was tweeting about how people are getting a hold of his phone number and asking him stuff. Like, just give people their space right now. I know that a lot of people care about Scott. You want to try to be close to it and, grieve in your own way. But please give people their space at the same time. And by the way, Brian Bill 17 here over on Twitch saying blood clots with heart surgery or blood clots with surgery are very serious. My dad recently lost his leg, would have had a heart attack if the doctors didn't catch the blockage to his heart. Well, Brian, I'm glad to hear your dad is okay. I'm very sorry to hear about his leg. But yes, if you are in pain or you feel you need to go to a doctor and get checked out, don't let these things linger. You never know. All right. Well, we'll pivot away from Scott Hall talk. Like I said, I'm sure we'll be talking about Scott here much more in the coming days. But let's talk about Cody Rhodes possibly coming to WWE, possibly for the last time, because, I know everybody's really burned out on this talk, Michael. Is Cody Rhodes coming to WWE? Shit or get off the pot. I think that's where a lot of people are at this point. It's so crass,
This is like the ultimate Raw ratings booster here, right? Every week we tune in to see, last week it was Austin, right? But this week, every week, are we going to see Cody this week? Is he going to debut? Vince McMahon, Nick Khan, Bruce Pritchard, they're milking this for all it's worth, right?
Oh, yeah. So the Observer here today saying that WWE had creative plans set up for a surprise Cody Rhodes debut to happen imminently, as in the next week or so, with Rhodes set to face Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. However, WWE creative was reportedly told last week to hold off on working on the Rhodes-Rollins creative until Rhodes signs his WWE contract because they had already worked on the creative, but then they had to stop when they weren't sure if Rhodes was returning. Rhodes' WWE return is not a dead deal. Upper-level WWE sources have noted they don't know what happened with the Rhodes talks, and it's not a sure thing that his return has fallen through, as talks were ongoing during the week still could debut imminently. Here's my favorite part of this report. It is believed that Rhodes has offers from different places. There's a feeling within WWE that Rhodes not signing a contract to return is either him angling for a better deal with the idea of using Mania as leverage, or the deal is not going to happen, or he's playing some kind of Brian Pillman game with the company. Pillman was able to obtain his WCW release by convincing them he could play up his loose cannon gimmick if he were let go, but then he made some surprise appearances for ECW, started a bidding war between WCW and WWE. The WWE obviously wound up winning. The plan as of now, though, is to hold off on any Rollins WrestleMania build until the titles, the Raw Tag title triple threat was done, which was done this past Monday. Saw RK Bro take the titles, and they defeated Rollins and Owens and Alpha Academy. Now that tag feud is over, and it looks like Owens and Steve Austin are going to do something at Mania, now it's time to get the ball rolling. Possibly, probably, hypothetically tonight on Raw towards a Cody Rhodes Seth Rollins match. Any thought on that word garble about Cody Rhodes that I just spewed out there?
No, I mean, I think it's fascinating to kind of see the inner machinations of this whole thing, because we've anticipated it since earlier this year when that contract expired. What's going on? We're anticipating this, right? Like, we're watching Raw every week, and it's just, what is Cody Rhodes going to do? This multiple offers thing kind of stuck with me, because I'm thinking, okay, well, he has an offer from AEW, which is maybe whatever Tony Khan offered him that he turned down back in January, whatever it was. He obviously has an offer maybe from WWE that they were kind of making plans around. Okay, so what? Ring of Honor? Well, not Ring of Honor now, because Tony Khan, MLW, right? Like, what are the other organizations? GCW?
Maybe he wants to control his narrative, Michael.
Oh my gosh.
You know,
don't we all, right? But it's, for me, the thing is, Rollins is a big name player here. This is the most interesting thing about this entire thing to me. Not that Cody Rhodes might be angling for a better deal or leveraging this, that, or the other, but the fact that they're going to have him debut in a feud against Seth Rollins, to me, says something about where they view him. Now, they can change their mind, they can move him around, but this is meant to be a big name feud. Rollins is still booked as a main eventer. He is a multi-time world champion. It says they have some confidence, and I almost believe, Nick, that they might actually have Cody Rhodes go over in this feud, which, again, we talk about how many people AEW is bringing on right now. Cody Rhodes debuting in WWE on Raw, a brand that's a little bit thin on star power right now anyway, against Seth Rollins. This makes him like a much bigger deal than I thought WWE would consider him at this point.
Well, and it's in Jacksonville tonight. That's the big one too. And obviously Jacksonville is AEW's home turf. I'm really very interested to hear if Cody does come out tonight. Does he rag his former employer in some way? Does he take a shot? I mean, everybody's been so nice up till now, so respectful. But, like, how do you walk into your former employer's backyard, make your debut rah-rahing and waving the flag for his competitor, and not say something, I think, that would create some friction or controversy?
Well, I guess that's the point, is he's going to show up as a babyface, we're assuming, right? Especially if he's feuding against Rollins in Jacksonville.
Sure. So,
because if he shows up as a heel Cody Rhodes, which he didn't want to be in AEW, and he was kind of leaning that way anyway with the fan reactions, heel Cody Rhodes can say whatever he wants to about AEW, and WWE fans gonna, whatever, AEW fans will be like, we told you he's a jackass, he's a wolf in sheep's clothing, right?
Yeah, I don't know how you get to it, right? I mean, everybody's still kind of up in arms about the Jeff Hardy debut last week, where he just kind of came out and danced and like was part of a schmaz. Like, I can't imagine Seth Rollins is going to be beating down, somebody, and Cody makes a save. I mean, we already kind of saw the Edge grandstanding, who's going to accept my open challenge for WrestleMania. That seems like a pretty open way to do it. Or does Rollins just come out and rag Jacksonville and, oh, you guys are the home of the most elite fans of the planet, whatever you say, out comes Cody Rhodes to defend the good name of Jacksonville.
That's very similar to the Kevin Owens story, though, isn't it? I don't know.
Well, here's the thing about Jacksonville. Cody is over like Grover in Jacksonville. Different story in Chicago.
True.
True. And I was there with the Anthony Ogogo Cody match that went down in Jacksonville. I thought there was a good chance Cody was going to get booed there. He was not. He was cheered. Now, whether or not the AEW faithful, like now that he's not with the company, decide to hate him, that's a different story. I don't know how that plays out or not, but a bit risky putting him out in front of that Jacksonville crowd, in my opinion.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, you show up, he says, I got a better big money offer from WWE. It's just, how do you do that without him turning into a completely unlikable heel character? And again, I think he still wants to be more of that Dusty Rhodes babyface character, persona, whatever. It's interesting. I think, again, bigger point here for me, I'm watching Raw live tonight, so I don't get this spoiled, but sometimes I watch it on tape delay or the next morning. I got to tune in tonight because I got to see what happens here. And again, if he does debut in a feud against Seth Rollins, to me, that says WWE is taking him more seriously than I think a lot of fans online believe they would.
Well, and Kirk Ailman here saying Cody debuts tonight. He's going to take some indirect jabs at Tony by dissing the Jaguars, which really isn't that hard. Aren't they really bad?
They diss themselves, right? That kind of didn't they lose their coach to controversy midway through a season? That anyway, yeah.
And he yelled.
Can we pull up this Brian V quote here just real quick? I want to address it just right off the top. Brian V, I'm confused of how Cody cut down Triple H with the throne and then is going to WWE. LOL, crazy. And then this is what I love about pro wrestling. Things like this happen. Pro wrestlers in the industry have a shorter memory than most fans do. And I think this is a good point. Nobody cares at this point. It's just business at this moment.
Yeah, totally. I think it's all business. And like eventually you're going to get Cody Triple H in some fashion. I would hope, unless Hunter's just done with the business forever, which I guess is a possibility as well. I'm not saying they're actually going to have a match like Hunter in somebody's corner, that kind of deal. And for what it's worth, Brian Bills here saying the Jaguars made some big splashes in free agency today. That's big heat if he does. Okay, I don't know. I wish I knew anything about foosball, but I don't, Brian. I apologize.
Tom Brady pulled a Mark Henry.
He did.
He said he was retiring, and then he canceled it.
Send him a salmon-colored suit.
That's right.
All right, we're going to start here with a silly story that leads into a serious story. So we'll start with the silly part. Former NXT superstar Pete Dunne is now known as Butch on the main roster. Fightful is saying it was noted that a few non-WWE wrestlers knew of the name change as far back as Thursday. They were speculating it could be a rib related to WWE Hall of Famers, the Bushwhackers, Butch and Luke, because Luke is Ridge Holland's first name. It's a real thinker. It's a real thinker. So, of course, SmackDown on Fox saw Sheamus and Ridge introduce Butch during the backstage segment to hype their match with Kofi and Big E. Michael Cole referred to Butch as another one of Sheamus's proteges, noted that they are all longtime friends. And then Butch accompanied Holland and Sheamus to the ring for their match. While Sheamus and Holland controlled the match, most of the match, Kingston mounted some offense later on, but Butch distracted him on the apron, which allowed Sheamus to finish him off for the pin. There was, of course, the incident on the outside with Big E that we will get to here in just a moment. But to get it out of the way, thoughts on Butch? Thoughts on Pete Dunne as Butch?
I mean, I hate it personally. But you know, Pete Dunne, Vince McMahon said nobody can spell Dunne. It's not spelled right. Whatever. We beat up the name thing so many times in WWE. Going back to, you mentioned Big E in this, right? Big E Langston. So I think it's dumb, but what are you going to do at this point? It's 2022. Vince McMahon does what he does.
Oh my God. So dumb. So dumb. Butch. And I think the Fightful report was like, there was a character on the Little Rascals in the 50s called Butch, and that was the one. Here's the thing. And like, look, hey, listen, I'm a theater kid. I love Newsies. All right. It is a sleeper Christian Bale classic. Okay. And for those that don't know, Christian Bale was in fact the lead in Newsies musical film. Was not supposed to be a musical. Anyway, it's not about Newsies, other than the fact that these men now look like a group of Newsies, and that's all I can think about when I look at them. Yeah,
that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Well, and I also like, again, WWE gonna do what WWE gonna do, but the name Butch, like there are other connotations sometimes it's used in slang in certain ways. It's weird that they want to take Pete Dunne and make him Butch. Other than, you know, Butch Cassidy, there's a cool ass name, right? So
cool Butch.
Yeah, I who knows, but yeah.
It's like you have cachet with Pete Dunne, right? Your fan base knows Pete Dunne. Butch, he didn't look happy with it, right? Like the thing about it for me was at no point did Butch look engaged with what he was doing. And part of it I know was like there was a genuine concern for Big E on the outside, and it kind of takes you out of that moment. So what happened here was towards the end of the match, Ridge Holland goes to deliver a belly-to-belly suplex on the outside to Big E. Now, Big E, like, it's not – look, I don't want to get into the, semantics about exactly how this went wrong, but this man got lifted and instead of falling flat on his back, fell pretty much right on top of his head. He confirmed via videos and social media posts that he did, in fact, break his neck, but it doesn't look like he's going to need surgery, fractured two spinal discs. Fightful saying, amongst the several members of the roster that came to Big E in the hospital, Ridge Holland was present there, checked on the former champion. The Observer saying no heat on Ridge backstage, carried himself well. Accidents happen. PW Insider saying WWE called up Butch to SmackDown so they could set up a 6-man WrestleMania feud between Sheamus, Holland, and Butch versus the New Day. But that match is now up in the air, obviously, due to the injury to Big E here, man. That was a really, really, really gnarly fall. Really fall.
Man,
really
and it shows you just how dangerous this sport is. Like, we take for granted these guys do bumps like this. These men and women do bumps like this every day, every night and night. And it's just like a freak thing happens sometimes. It's, people always want to put blame on stuff, but Big E's a big guy. There's a whole lot of things you can dissect there. It just, these things happen sometimes. Going back to the Draws incident and D'Lo Brown, and it affects both men. Unfortunately, Big E was on the worse end of this. I'm glad he doesn't need surgery. I was super impressed at Big E just coming out immediately and giving the thumbs up to the fans. And the thing I think about constantly with this is Big E is a huge freaking star. Yeah. Not to make it about pro wrestling, but because he's okay, I'm going to make it about pro wrestling and storytelling and thinking about this guy's got a connection with the fans. The outpouring on social media was all there. I'm wishing him the speediest of speedy recoveries. And I hope he comes back. I don't know what the timeline is for some injury like this. Bring this dude back. Book him to just conquer. He conquers a freaking broken neck. He conquers everybody in the roster. He conquers Roman Reigns. This dude deserves to be the face of WWE. He's just so damn light.
Yeah, and hey, I hope he, knock on wood, I hope he is back, right? This is very serious stuff here. I know he's not going to require surgery, but you bust up your neck like that, it's a very sensitive situation. So I would not expect Big E back in a hasty fashion. Just me personally, could be wrong there. But I also hope that if he comes back, he's pushing a big light. And that's the silver lining on stuff like this, right? It's obviously awful when people get injured and they go down, but there's a moment here where there's an organic reaction from the fans that feel for this man. They want to root for this man. And when he comes back, look at that Daniel Bryan effect, that Bryan Danielson effect, right? I mean, there's a real organic love there when the fans watch their heroes go through these kinds of situations.
It's true. 100%. Yeah.
So Azell here saying tough week for wrestling. Man, ain't that the truth, right? It's starting off, it's a heavy Monday here. All right. Well, let's try to get some positive news in here before we dive in the mailbag. Hear from Jungle Boy if you're in audio form. Some Hall of Fame news. Queen Sharmell has been announced for the 2022 Hall of Fame class. She's going in alongside Vader, The Undertaker, obviously most known for her run with Booker T as Queen Sharmell, but obviously was also a Nitro girl with Paisley. She was a valet there for a while at WCW as well. How do you feel about Sharmell going in?
Happy for her. Not as huge, other than the run with Booker T, and I know she spent a long time in the business, so not going to take away from any of her work. Not a huge impact on me as much personally, but I'm happy that she's getting this nod, and I think well-deserved for her time alongside, especially at least her WWE run.
Yeah, and I'm a big Sharmell fan. I thought she was great. Wonderful addition to the Hall of Fame. Don't want to take anything against her. And I guess that I'm softening this because, like, what I'm going to say is, like, it is kind of a showing of how thin on female top stars they were up until about 10 years ago, right?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Any woman of any kind of possible note from Attitude Era or before or a little after, fair game. But then you're going to get 10 years, 20 years in the future here. Look at how fertile the women's division is at the moment. It's going to get harder and harder to pick, from these generations. That's all I'm saying.
Well, and I yes, but also I think part of this is WWE's own problem, which is they put in like 20 people every year into the Hall of Fame. And no offense to Coco Beware, but like we have a lot of men in the Hall of Fame who what is the criteria for getting into the WWE Hall of Fame? Other sports, got to be a champion of some time, got to be top of your class, top of your position, whatever it is. So, it's the WWE Hall of Fame. It means a lot, but a lot of people get into.
Yeah, and Brian and Jamie here both asking, why is Miss Elizabeth not in the Hall of Fame? That's a great question. Politics?
Yeah.
I'm going to guess.
Yep.
All right, and of course, our other Hall of Fame note here comes from the Wrestling Observer. Of course, we've noted the Steiner brothers are rumored to be inducted, but that's going to depend on Scott. Now, Scott is a wild card, and he said some very inflammatory things.
Not Scott Steiner.
He said some very inflammatory things about the company and Hulk Hogan in the past, in particular. I think he's threatened violence against Hulk Hogan. So if Scott is not willing to be inducted, they're just going to induct Rick. And so Rick Steiner, Rick Steiner, father of Braun Breaker, will go to the Hall of Fame without his brother Scott if need be. I am a huge Dogface Gremlin fan. Rick Steiner, obviously very worthy, but it's going to be so weird if it's just him and not him and Scott. Like, I think everybody would rather that be the package, right?
Can you do that? Is that even allowed legally? They're to get we're having Braun Breaker induct his dad and then declare his intention for the 2023 Royal Rumble.
Rick's going to be going into the Hall of Fame. Scott's going to be at home on his Steiner recliner, poured himself a Steiner screwdriver, right? Watching the whole thing play out.
Doing some of that Scott Steiner math. Well, if I wait however many years.
All right. Well, Michael, I want to thank you so much for joining me at the Top Show Talk, all the news of the day. Thank you to everybody who chimed in here today. Dustin asking if Scott Steiner also has beef with Triple H as well. Wouldn't be shocked. So
I mean, he beat him in that push-up contest, didn't he? Back in 2004.
That's true. I think so. So anyway, thank you everybody for chiming in, and thank you to AEW once again for the great AEW Media Scrum at Revolution with Jungle Boy there. It looks like we're gonna have another big AEW interview here this week on Wednesday, so stick around. We got some more big audio coming to you. Follow from that Wardlow one I did about a week ago that everybody seemed to enjoy so much. Mm-hmm. So today's poll question comes to us from @WinkDaily. And by the way, the Wrestling Inc. Twitter account is back. Did you see this, Michael?
I did. It's a tough day across the world, but good news for Wrestling Inc. Twitter. That's awesome.
@Wrestling Inc. is back. @WrestlingInc.com. We'll go back into the garage for when we get bumped off for tweeting about FIFA, I guess, or whatever.
For the next Olympic Games, right? That's it.
Whatever. We didn't do nothing. All right. So anyway, we're back, baby. I put the first tweet out today. It was Big E gyrating. That was what I thought was appropriate. So go follow @Wrestling Inc. Get back on the bandwagon, but @Wink Daily, WINC Daily. That's the account to follow if you want to vote in our daily poll. So today's poll question: do you think Cody Rhodes is going to return to WWE tonight on Raw in Jacksonville? About 300 votes here in the past hour. God, it is so good to get hundreds of votes again with our account. 53.5% yes, 46.5% no. Tight.
Ooh,
really tight. What do you?
When I voted earlier, it was like 90% yes, so I'm going to go with that.
What do you make about the fact there's like a 6-point difference here?
I think it's that it's been talked about for so many weeks now that I'm not going to believe it till I got this with Austin, right? I'm not going to believe he's coming back till I see it. And that's where we are with Cody Rhodes. I don't believe it until he shows up in the middle of that ring.
And I @Israel Capote over on Twitter. At this point, it would be best for Cody to join WWE. AEW's roster is overloaded without a direction. Wow. I don't know about without a direction.
They got a lot of directions, but not for everybody, maybe.
All roads lead to Hangman Page versus CM Punk, I think, at this point, right?
That's it.
Let's see here. We have somebody upset here. They didn't make it on time for the show. Bruce, I'm very sorry about that. Resident Evil AMC, I guess, is plugging his podcast. And Leo here thinks Victoria should be first at the Hall of Fame. I think Victoria is already in the Hall of Fame, if I'm not mistaken.
You got your wish on the Wrestling King Daily. You're welcome. You're welcome.
All right. Boom. That's going to bring us to the end of the show here today, everybody. It is great to be back in the studio talking into a nice microphone and doing this show for all of you out there. If you like the Wrestling Inc. Daily, Support us on iTunes or whatever podcast platform you'd like. You can also support WrestlingInc.com. Like I said, we're back on Twitter, baby, at Wrestling Inc. Give us the follow there. Tweet us. Show us love appropriately. Clothed love. And, of course, support the Wrestling Inc. podcast. It'll be back here tonight after Raw, where everybody's going to be talking about, oh, my God, Cody Rhodes is back. He just shot so hard on Tony Khan. He went to the shooting range on the other AEW.
He did it.
There may be Omegas, but I'm the Alpha, right? And then Alpha Academy comes out. So anyway, Michael, what do you want to put over here to wrap up the show today?
Good to have you back in studio, Nick. Good to be here with you. Put over all the fans out there and just, been a rough week in pro wrestling. So I'm just going to leave it there and just say thank you all for listening to the show. I really appreciate it.
Yes. And once again, sending our absolute best out to Scott Hall, all his fans, friends, and family. I'm at Nick_Hausman over on Twitter. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And remember, if you winked, you didn't.